Chapter 10. What's Been Done. In the dark will be brought to the light. The next morning, I woke up feeling relaxed. It was the best sleep I've had since taking on Haley's case. I didn't feel proud or accomplished considering the fact people have lost their lives over the actions of one psychopath. But knowing Haley was found and could finally be laid to rest with a proper burial made me feel that a lot of wrongs had finally been made right. I drove to the station to see the usually empty parking lot had some cars parked in parking spaces. No news vans, though, so that was nice. I walked into the station and found the mayor with a few council members working on a memorial for Haley and her grandparents. There was a huge picture of Haley in the middle. It looked to be her latest school picture, and her grandparents' pictures were on both sides of her picture. They were both white and black photos from long, long ago, when they were both young adults. "These are the only two pictures we could find of them," said the mayor. He continued, "We heard Haley loved daisies, so we ordered 1,000 for the funeral." "When is it?" I asked. "In 3 days. Both Haley and her grandparents will be buried next to each other out of town." "We couldn't find any other family members," said one of the council members. "I don't think they had any," I said. I walked down the hall to my office and closed the door. I had a voicemail from the state's attorney requesting a call back as soon as possible. I called him and he answered after the first ring. "I've been waiting for you," he said. "The feeling is mutual," I said. "I have a problem no one else knows about, and I can only tell you," I went on to say. The state's attorney said, "Me first. I've been doing some digging on Carrie and Rios." I interrupted, saying, "That's exactly what I was going to tell you." He said, "Carrie's parents all of a sudden passed away shortly after they met." "They disappeared all of a sudden, didn't they?" I asked. He chimed back in saying, "Yes! Rios convinced everyone they had dementia and wandered off one day. Even the authorities believed him and no official investigation was ever launched." I said, "He slipped them some pills without them knowing any better and did the same with Carrie." "Can you prove that?" he asked. "No," I said, disappointed. "Give me some time, and I can probably change that." I walked back past the mayor and council members still working on the memorials. Looking at Haley's picture a second time, I stopped dead in my tracks. "Are you okay?" the mayor asked. "Yes, I'm just glad she's getting a proper send-off," I said quickly as I rushed out the door. It dawned on me that I never found the doll even after Carrie crashed. I got into my car and called the tow company, asking if they still had Carrie's wrecked motorcycle. They said yes and also told me that some guy had been asking to haul it away from them. But they told them no, since he would never give them a name. "I'll be right there," I said as I drove straight there. I pulled into the parking lot and walked inside. Someone walked up to me and asked if I had just talked to him over the phone. "Bumper is my name," he said. "Someone has been calling and coming in every day trying to get that motorcycle. I have no idea why anyone would want it. It's completely mangled." "Was he a little creepy looking and had an unusual voice on it?" I asked. "Yeah, he would never give a name or a reason why he wanted something that was completely destroyed," he said. I asked if I could take a look at it, and he'd lead me to the back of the garage. He said, "We brought it inside since we got the feeling he was going to sneak in and take it one way or another." I walked over to Carrie's motorcycle, which had been reduced to a heap of useless metal. "Why does that weird guy want this pile of junk?" Bumper asked. I replied, "He doesn't want the bike. He wants what's inside it." I took out my pocket knife and popped open the saddlebag that was barely hanging for dear life. Inside was the doll, completely unscathed. "He wanted a doll?" Bumper asked. Thinking quickly on my feet without telling him the truth, I said, "Some of these antique dolls go for a lot of money. This needs to be returned to its rightful owner before he gets a hold of it and sells it. Reyes knows the doll is the only thing that could give away his dirty secrets. If he gets rid of the doll, he gets away with everything." I pulled up to Carrie's house with the doll as the sun was setting. Crime scene had left behind all the yellow tape on the property from excavating the bodies, but no one was around. I grabbed the doll and went inside and walked down to the basement. It was completely different than from last time I was there from the excavation. I sat the doll down on top on the ground in between the two exhumed graves and turned my portable radio on and waited in the dark. I sat down in the corner waiting and waiting. An hour went by before I started to give up. I felt bad considering last time I spoke with Haley, she thanked me for finally being able to rest, and here I was, asking her to come back one last time, after all she's been through. Feeling guilty, I stood up and walked over to the doll. I reached down to pick it up, but it wouldn't move. I backed up looking down at the doll, completely surprised, as if it was a statue that wouldn't budge. I shined my flashlight on it to see it was exactly as I had left it. I stepped back up to try and pick it up again, but it felt stiff as a rock and would not move. Something had been happening this entire time and I never knew it. I looked at my portable radio and saw it was completely dead. Weird, I had just charged the battery last night. I walked out to my car and grabbed a spare and replaced it with the dead battery. It powered back on, showing a full battery. I walked back inside the house and back down to the basement. As my foot hit the basement floor, I heard the beep that my battery was once again low. I looked at my radio and saw that battery had suddenly died as well. Trying to figure what was going on, I heard footsteps directly above me as if someone was slowly walking down the hall. I shined my flashlight back to the doll to make sure it was still there. I turned back around to walk up the stairs and saw Carrie at the top of the stairs. "Carrie?" I asked. Carrie didn't move and stood there motionless, as if she was frozen in time. She was looking directly in front of her and over me with a blank expression on her face. Then I realized Haley was laid to rest, but Carrie had not. I started to walk up the stairs before Carrie turned and walked out of sight. I made it to the top of the stairs and looked for Carrie, but she was gone. She's going to Ria's house, I told myself. I got into my car and drove down the road to Reyes's house. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. I checked the door handle, and it was locked. The driveway was empty, and I thought, where else would Reyes be? I walked to the back of the house and checked the rear door. It was locked, too. I went back to my car and got a screwdriver and walked back to the back door. I took out my pocket knife and picked the lock and made my way inside with my flashlight. I searched the house, and Reyes was not there. I walked to the front of the house and looked out the window towards my patrol car. Behind me, I heard the same footsteps slowly walking down the hallway. "Carrie?" I asked again. No answer. I walked down the hallway and into the main bedroom. I had never been in Reyes's bedroom. The other times I was here, I had never thought to look in his bedroom. I tried to turn the light switch on, but the light did not come on. I heard scratching coming from the other side of Rio's bed on the floor. I walked over and shined my flashlight to find Carrie scratching at the carpet. As soon as my flashlight illuminated her, she turned and looked at me so fast, it even scared me to the point I backed out of the bedroom. I took a moment to catch my breath and walked back into the bedroom. The scratching stopped instantly. I flipped the light switch again, and this time, the light came on. I walked back over to where Carrie was, and she was gone. There was a rug in the same spot Carrie was scratching at. I moved the rug out of the way and discovered a piece of the hardwood floor had been cut in 4 into a square. I removed the loose piece of flooring and looked in to find a box. I picked the box up and sat it on the bed and opened it. Inside were the same pills I found in Carrie's bedroom a few days ago. I also discovered newspaper clippings about Carrie's parents from when they went missing. Reyes must have kept these items as a trophy for getting away with multiple causes of death to 3 different people. Realizing Reyes could return home anytime, I put the lid back on the box and placed the box back in the secret hole, just as I had found it, and placed the rug back over it and left. There was no funeral for Carrie, Haley, and the grandparents. No other family members could be contacted, but I wasn't sure if there were any family members left. I went to the local cemetery for the burial and saw the mayor and council members with the memorial they made for Haley and her grandparents. I once again felt bad for Carrie, as I made her out to be the bad guy in all of this, so I could make it a little easier to catch Reyes. The memorials were amazing as they were outlined in daisies, even the grandparents' pictures. The local news, most of the townspeople, and many others from all around showed up to pay their respects for Haley and her grandparents. There was only one person I was interested in seeing there, Reyes. The ceremony started and nearly 1,000 people showed up to pay their respects. I remained in the back of the crowd so I could try and see Reyes. But out of the 1,000 people there, I was having difficulty spotting him. I did find the preacher before the ceremony started and asked him if he planned on asking anyone if they would speak before lowering the coffins into the ground, and he said yes. That was great, because if Reyes was there, I'd really like to speak to him and offer him the chance to say his goodbyes to everyone watching in the crowd that didn't have a clue he was the real killer. The preacher spoke and did his best, knowing he had no idea who these people were and what they had really gone through. The time came for him to offer if anyone would like to say anything in front of the crowd, and the mayor volunteered. He walked up in front of everyone and introduced himself and gave a nice speech about how the entire town never gave up hope nor stopped looking for Haley, and how she was safe and everyone cried. Before he walked away, he publicly asked for me to say something, and I thought that was a fantastic idea. I thanked everyone for coming out to pay their respects for four strangers they never knew, and told them most of the truth how this all came to be. I didn't mention who could have been at fault for the lives being lost, and wrapped it all up by dropping the bombshell to force Reyes out of hiding. I told everyone it was believed Haley never had a father in her life, but she really did. The father had been placed in a complicated situation since Haley was born, and despite being forbidden from seeing his own daughter, he got a job as the school janitor just so he could see her. The whole crowd gasped, and I could tell from the expressions on their faces they were just now realizing that there was a lot more to the story that no one was telling them. And before this family gets laid to rest together, I'd like to know if the father, Reyes, would like to say his final goodbyes, I said. Once again, everyone gasped and looked around for Reyes, but he was nowhere to be seen. Everyone was thinking it, and even one person yelled out, "What kind of fathers doesn't show up for his own family's funeral?" I got the message delivered without having to say it myself. I could tell people were starting to have second thoughts about Carrie and Rios as to who really killed Haley and her grandparents. The preacher man walked back in front and tried to calm everyone down by reminding everyone they were there to pay their respects and not get vengeful. All four caskets were then lowered into the ground, and daisies were sprinkled on top of them, and tears started flowing again. I shook the mayor's hand and told him something urgent came out, and I needed to leave. I left and drove to Carrie's house and walked inside as quietly as I could. I was not surprised to see the refrigerator had been moved, exposing the stairs to the downstairs. I remember covering it last time I left from there. I could hear grunts and heavy breathing coming from down in the basement. I shined my flashlight down the stairs and yelled, "Who's down there?" as loud as I could know damn well who was down there. Reyes instantly froze and tried to hide his heavy breathing, but could only do so for a short while before he started breathing heavily again. I walked down the stairs and saw Reyes sitting down on the basement floor, covered in sweat and exhaustion.
"I can explain,"
he said. "You don't have to. I know everything," I replied. The doll was in the same spot I had left it a couple of days ago. I went on to say, "I left the doll there waiting for you to come back. You waited until everyone was preoccupied with the funeral so you would come back unnoticed. It was the perfect time, wasn't it?" Reyes didn't say anything as he was too busy trying to catch his breath.
"Why is that thing so heavy all of a sudden?"
Reyes asked in between breaths. "It's weighed down by the guilt you've been carrying ever since you killed Carrie's parents and your own daughter," I replied.
"You don't understand."
Reyes attempted to plead his case, but I interrupted him, saying, "Of course I understand. You drugged the parents of your daughter's mother and did the same to Carrie. You let everyone believe their minds started slipping. I found what you've been hiding. All of it." Reyes didn't say anything and looked away, knowing he had been caught after all this time. "It's over now," I told him. Reyes stood up and looked at me and said, "It's just me and you now. My secrets dies with you." Reyes charged at me with everything he had and tackled me to the ground. We rolled around on the dirty basement floor as he was able to pin me down on the ground and grab my throat with both hands. I did a swim move on his extended arms to free his grip and then punched him in the face as he fell off of me. Reyes started breathing heavy again as he was already exhausted from trying to pick up the doll. I stood up and looked down at Reyes, watching blood pour from his nose. I dropped to one knee and punched him for Carrie, her parents, and twice for Haley. Reyes yelled out in pain and rolled away. I saw him grab for a loose brick as he stood to one knee, so I kicked him in the face, knocking him back down, and he dropped the brick. I picked the brick up and clobbered Reyes in the face with it, causing him to lose consciousness as he fell onto his back and stopped moving as blood rushed out of his nose and mouth down his shirt. Making sure Reyes couldn't hurt anyone ever again, I opened the freezer and dropped Reyes inside. I picked up some chains the excavating crew left behind and latched the freezer door shut. I bet you remember doing this to Haley, I said as I walked away. I took one final look at the basement and walked over to the doll and picked it up and carried it back outside to my patrol car. I went to the back of my patrol car and grabbed my power drill and a couple of screws. I walked back inside the house and screwed the basement door shut and shoved the refrigerator back in front. I walked back out of the house and looked back, reflecting on all the times I'd been inside, from meeting Carrie for the first time to sending a demon back to hell for the last time. I got back to the police station and dusted myself off from the dust. I sat the doll on my desk, welcoming it to its new home. I'm not sure it will ever speak to me again, but if it does, I'll be happy to hear from it.